remember at the stage that you are, if you are volunteering into something, then there are consequences for that. And that world operates based on your consent. Whether you know what to do or not to do, the reality factor is what you're experiencing in that legal is because of consensual legal participation. People will say to me, how do I not legally participate? And that's like someone saying, how do I not step in manure while I'm in manure? I said, well, just step out of the manure. But they don't know how to do this, and that's why we're going slowly on these videos, because the concepts that we're dealing with are going to be hard and fast. That's why there's a Latin maxim that says equity, fairness, conscience will not support a volunteer. So if you volunteer into something by your own consent, showing what is yours is involved in conjunction with the legal system, well, you can't receive equitable relief because you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're claiming legal title and you've mingled truth in with the fiction. So equity can't come to your rescue because of your own mistake until you discover the mistake and then realize what's going on. So we're going through these definitions so that you can comprehend what we're talking about. So when I look up the word involuntary, it says without will or power of choice, opposed to volition or desire. An involuntary act is that which is performed with constraint or with repugnance or without the will to do it. An action is involuntary when it is performed under duress. So there's many people that'll walk around with John will use the legal surname title Smith, and you'll say, you can't make me get a license. I'm being forced to do this under duress. Well, people could use that for everything in that world, and then they say, you can't make me do anything. I'm going, but there would be no way to run rules within a legal format without there being laws to enforce it. So if I've entered into a legal club and now I'm refusing to perform the legal duties, I'm the one in violation, not that legal system. Do not blame Satan if you're consenting to be in Satan's world. Just because you were deceived doesn't mean there isn't going to be consequences. You got to wake up to how you were beguiled. So that's why we're dealing with the word involuntary here. And then there's voluntary. Now, if we look at voluntary, it says free, without compulsion or solicitation, without consideration, without valuable consideration, gratuitous, as a voluntary conveyance. That's what you're doing with your given name in the system. That's a voluntary conveyance of that title. We already went over the court case that said that there was no provision in the Canadian legal system. Now, it's the same as in the US. In the Canadian legal system, for a person to transfer their given names to anyone, whether to a person, a corporation, or a trust, which we've already explained that the Registrar General's office that registers the births, the deaths, and the marriages is a trustee. It is a corporation, okay, and it is a legal person in law. So if you cannot do that from their side, well, then you must be voluntarily conveying it into the system and allowing them to assign that onto you. So there's a problem going on in the understanding of this. So we're volunteering to do wrong, and that's the only way I can describe this, just as eating from the forbidden fruit. We already mentioned that the statement of birth record, it's not a go-ahead document, it's a prohibition document. There's an error, there's property on their side in the legal. A child cannot consent to a contract. So if we wanted to look at this, this would actually be involuntary. if they see the given name placed on the record, because the child could never have consented to expose his private property into a public forum. So therefore, this would be an involuntary trust, not a voluntary trust. Now, how does the voluntary trust go about? Well, I guess I'm just going to have to use this one for display, but right now we'll just say the birth certificate. We take this birth certificate, because in order to get a birth certificate, they have to have both names. They need a given name, and they need a last name or a surname, or what we call a family Roman name, or a fictio. So you need the two to be together. Now remember, Section 15 of the Vital Statistics Act that we read from Ontario, which is going to be the same in all the other places, said that if a child's given name was not placed on the record, the parent with legal custody or the guardian, or the child when they reach age of consent, if their given name wasn't placed on the record, can add it to the record. Now, in the case of the record that my parents filled out, they were in legal custody and they put the given name on the record, even though it was a mistake, but they did it. Okay, just remember that. That was just what they did. It was their mistake. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. We already read that they can't transfer, so why did they convey something that the Canadian legal system already said was not transferable? Why did they put the given name on the record when they didn't have to? There wouldn't be a section there for a birth registration that occurred if you required both to be on there. But you won't get this document because this document doesn't really identify a living individual. It's just an ambiguous title with last name and given name, which appear to be together but not stated. It just says, if I'm going to use John Smith, it'll show up Smith, comma, John with name. Well, that means nothing. That's ambiguous and unclear. So they never trespassed really on the titles of the child. They were careful. And then they wait till you reach age of accountability where you volunteer with consent to say, I'll be the surety for this certificate. Now I'm in the game. And that's how it's played. Your consent's there. You're now a volunteer. And equity will not support that position.